I am the oldest of 5 children. That means that I have attended 5 kindergarten graduations, including my own. I distinctly remember standing in front of parents, guardians, and grandparents singing "I Believe I Can Fly" with my head held high and my chest pushed out. I knew, and all 4 of my younger siblings knew, that we could grow up and fly high and touch the sky, living up to our full potential. What better song to use to encourage and uplift young children? Kindergarten graduations and "I Believe I Can Fly" go together like peanut butter and jelly. But the singer behind that song, Robert Kelly, professionally known as R. Kelly, allegedly raped and assaulted countless young girls, some as young as 14 years old. He has been exploiting, manipulating, and violating girls for longer than I have been alive. The scariest part about it is that everyone knew, and no one did anything. No one helped these young girls, and no one saw that an injustice was done, even when there was video evidence. I will not go into the details of Kelly's heinous acts, but he represents a specific form of rape culture that preys after an extremely vulnerable group, Black girls. Sexual violence plagues all women across all racial backgrounds, but Black girls are left extremely vulnerable and are at a higher risk of victimization. Over 60% of Black women have reported that they have experienced some form of sexual violence by the age of 18. Over half of the Black women in the United States of America have been violated before they were even legal adults. 1 out of 15 victims of this sexual violence will report their assault. 1 in 15 Black women will report their assault. But we need to magnify this problem and explore the precedents and ask ourselves 3 questions. The first being, when did this happen before? Secondly, what has happened previously in history that has constructed a vehicle in which Black girls' voices are silenced and their trauma has been dismissed? How have we created a system within rape culture that particularly affects Black women and girls? Let's go back in time to Philadelphia, PA, 1776, my hometown. Thomas Jefferson wrote one of the most influential documents in American history, the Declaration of Independence. It was a turning point for this country. He crafted words demanding our freedom from Great Britain, demanding that we are blessed with certain inalienable rights that are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. But what baffles me and many other people is that a man who wrote so beautifully and eloquently on self-sustainability and equality and freedom owned over 600 slaves in his entire lifetime. And not only did he own them, he raped them. Sally Hemings was one of his slaves who was violated. And her rape began when she was 14 years old and he was 44. She also gave birth to 6 of his children. Many people argued that their relationship was in the presence of 2 consenting adults, but I find that extremely hard to believe, not only because of her slave woman status, but because of her age. She was 14, meaning that she could not consent to sex of any kind. Her slave woman status forbid her from consenting to any form of sexual relations with her slave master. Not only was she not recognized under the law, she was not recognized as a citizen. There was no recourse and no accountability. This exclusion that we see in American history began to normalize sexual violence against Black women and girls. It constructs foundational ideas on what Black womanhood is and is not. It is clear that the violence Thomas Jefferson perpetuated does not matter to American society. And it is also clear that while America was being founded and formulated, the identity of Black women and girls was being formulated as well. Stereotypes of Black women and girls were also being developed during this time period. Both Black men and Black women alike were seen as inherently sexually deviant. Black girls were said to be innately promiscuous and hypersexual. And today, a recent study conducted by the Georgetown Law Center on poverty and inequality proved that Black girls are considered to know more about adult topics and considered to know more about sex compared to their white counterparts. The age of girls studied ranged between 5 and 14 years old. American society has socialized our Black girls to be perceived as sexually deviant, and then dismissing this violence and their trauma as something that they deserved. Many authors and activists have described this dismissiveness of violence as deserving victims. While it is known that women are generally not believed when they voice their reality, Black women are at an even higher risk. In Arrested Justice, Black Women, Violence in America's Prison Nation, Beth E. Ritchie goes into the details of how Black women are blamed, stigmatized, or worse, criminalized for their abuse. The mainstream analysis of topics surrounding sexual violence and assault leaves out the way that race and racial stigma complicate racially gendered violence. There's little conversation around the connection between this and how we have perpetuated systems of oppression, further marginalizing Black women, and it is time for change. She also goes into a very particular cyclical violence that victimizes Black girls. Trap loyalty is a term used to describe Black women and used to describe the experiences that Black women go through in the context of navigating violent environments. And it is broken into 3 parts. The first being the obligation that Black women feel to buffer their families from racism in the public sphere. The second being the pressure to live up to the expectation that they, as Black women, will be able to withstand abuse and mistreatment more than any other member of their household. And an acceptance of community rhetoric that argues that Black women are in a more privileged position than Black men, even those who abuse them. Because of Black communities' violent and oftentimes fatal interaction with law enforcement, Black women oftentimes do not report to the police. Because of the figure that we have socialized Black women to be as strong and independent and resilient, there is a belief that Black women can somehow suppress their trauma without ever completely addressing these issues. Ritchie also fleshes out labels and these experiences by formulating them into explicit characteristics that identifies the way that Black women are exploited and disenfranchised. Trap loyalty is a great theoretical concept to understand the ways that Black women are specifically affected by a type of violence that plagues women across all racial backgrounds. When tackling issues surrounding systematic oppression, it is important to understand that certain groups experience violence in particular ways. We must be careful not to simplify these issues by grouping survivors together, using it as one shared experience. This is problematic and dangerous because it fails to recognize how personal identifiers such as race, class, gender identity, sexual orientation all complicate these types of violence. It is clear that there is a very pressing problem in our society, a problem that has been built into the socialization of Black girls and women. But we must ask ourselves, what can we do to help? And it is up to us. It is up to every single person sitting in this room today to make a change. It is up to us to listen to victims of abuse when they come forward and share their trauma, to make it our conscious effort to unlearn the dangerous language that we use to silence survivors. It takes an immense amount of courage to come forward and to share this trauma, oftentimes because the perpetrators are people that they know. It is up to us to create safe spaces in which survivors feel comfortable sharing their trauma so that their wounds can begin to heal. A space where they are not met with victim blaming and doubt, but where they are met with support, love, and care. Ask what they need from you and what you can do to help them. Provide them with resources such as therapy and counseling, and remind them that these options are available to them. But do not pressure them to do so, and leave it up to them to make these decisions for themselves. It's up to parents, guardians, and family members and friends to pay attention to warning signs. Evidence of self-harm, drug and alcohol abuse, disordered eating and eating disorders, depression, or anxiety can all hint towards signs that sexual violence has taken place. When addressing survivors, it is important to let them know that you are on their side and that this is not and will never be their fault. Far too often do girls think they are to blame for their trauma, and far too often are girls too afraid to come forward because of this. It is up to schools and administrations to listen to the voices of their students, providing thorough and easily accessible resources for their survivors, fully supporting Title IX programs, and providing the student body with advocates who will fight for them till the very end, people whose jobs are dedicated to advocating for survivors. In recent news, there has been a light at the end of the tunnel. Conversations surrounding sexual violence and harassment have been at the forefront of social justice work. Tanara Burke created the Me Too movement in 2006, and we are seeing a height in the recent years with sexual harassment allegations against a very long list of highly praised individuals. We are beginning to see just a taste of justice for girls and women across the country. But the fight does not stop here. It does not stop until each and every single one of us is free. Free from fear and free from violence. Today, I am here to amplify the voices of those who are not often heard, to understand why it's important the ways that we look at race and gender and the intersection of the two, and understand how they both play an important role in a Black woman and girl's life. To be clear, I am not the first person to talk about this. Countless Black feminist scholars have been researching and analyzing these problems since slavery. But when will we listen to them? When will enough be enough? I'm speaking today on behalf of survivors. I'm standing here for the Black girls who are suffering in silence. I'm standing here for the Black women who have been forced into silence all of their lives. I am here for the Black boys and the Black men who have been forced into silence. I am here for Black queer youth who are being forced into silence, who are suffering due to our heteronormative society. The time to listen and to act is now. The time to care about the lives and the voices and the humanity of our Black girls is now and has always been now. Our society cannot thrive when voices are silenced. A society cannot thrive when there is no accountability. It is up to us to hold perpetrators accountable. We can no longer place the responsibility on the victim, but on the people who perpetuate this violence. The problem is not the responsibility of survivors to fix, and this should not be and is not their burden. A society cannot thrive unless Black girls are participating in the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. Every single woman and girl deserves to live a life free from violence, free from the fear and the threat of violence. And this cycle that has been created since the founding of America needs to be dismantled and destroyed. And it starts with us. So simply, it starts with us. We were all meant to fly, and we were all meant to touch the sky. When will Black girls and Black women be able to do the same? And before I leave you all today, I want to dedicate this talk to my mother, Lewis-Nwalipenja, for teaching me everything I know, for encouraging me every single step of the way, because without you, I would not be here today. Thank you all for listening, and thank you all for coming to my TED Talk.